Yep.
Oh.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown here with you. Man, what a great day it is. Really, okay, we've had Missouri played the other night. Tennessee played the other night. They both won. Last weekend, Vanderbilt scored 63 points. And now we're going to start going snow skiing in the Sahara Desert too. But they scored 63 points. They may not score that many all year in conference games, but now we got the Big 12 starting today. College football underway. Rob Brown here with you, broadcasting live from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. They are open. They've been up here since early. We're getting a little great start to the day here. It is college football. It's in the air. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, is going to join us, and we'll also be joined by Stat Tiger right after that. And then our regular rapid fire college football round table. Say hello to all of our listeners over in Atlanta, down in Alabama, Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Lake Martin, Central Alabama, and the great folks at Radio Alabama Group. We're going to be talking college football nonstop. So, hey, we don't need to warm up, man. We've been getting warmed up for how long has talking season been going on, Rodney and Jimmy? It's been going on a while. Rodney, it's game day in Tuscaloosa. Utah State Aggies coming to town. They're a prohibitive underdog, about 40 points. But don't tell that to Nick Saban and his team. As far as they're concerned, they're the only team that matters because they're playing them today. But Rodney, good morning, and let's talk some college football. If I twist your arm,
It's taken long enough to get here, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like going on that long drive, that long trip. And Rob, I know you've taken many of those, and Jimmy too.
Yeah.
And it's like a 900-mile drive, and the last 30 miles are the longest. I mean, it seems like those last 30 miles take longer than the other 870. You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of what it is as you start to approach college football. But yeah, I mean, it's here, and I think right now, obviously, like you said, 41 and a half points is the last line I saw. It's kind of amazing. I think that's a little high myself, but I think that certainly everyone here is excited. I know that Coach Saban had in his teleconference press conference the other night. He was starting to get. You could tell it was getting close to game day. He'd been really positive, Jimmy and Rob, throughout the entire process of the fall camp and all of that. And then all of a sudden on Wednesday night, he was chippy. I mean, he was really chippy.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's when it's here.
Well, I mean, look, you want to be edgy like that. I mean, it's an opponent, and you know those guys. He calls it rat poison, but he's right. The magazines, the social media, you can't turn on any ESPN, SEC network, any TV channel. It's about Alabama and how excited everybody is, and that this may be the best team Nick Saban's ever had. And he knows those players are hearing that from their family, their girlfriends, their classmates and all, and he's got to keep them focused. Let's talk about this Utah State team coming in. They were 11-3 last year with first-year coach Blake Anderson. They won last week. They beat UConn 31-20. Wasn't an easy win, but Mora's going to get UConn playing good football. We want football to be good all over the country, especially in the South where we live. But what do you know about the Aggies?
Well, I obviously they went 11-3 last season, so they had a good year. They won their conference and all of that. And then I watched some of the game last Saturday, against UConn, and obviously, Utah State started a little slowly, turned the ball over a couple of times. And I think the real thing that hurt UConn in that game to me was when their quarterback went down. Obviously, they brought in a true freshman, and he was just kind of overwhelmed, which is what you would expect. I mean, the first game out of high school, all of a sudden, he's thrust into that situation, and it is very difficult. But, I think when you look at Utah State, first of all, they have a quarterback, Logan Bonner, that seems to be pretty in control. I think he's been around since 2016. Can you believe that? 2016. I mean,
Wow.
this is like 7 seasons that he's been a part of college football somehow.
Tommy boy.
So, yeah, I mean, just crazy. But the guy's really, he's a really good player. I mean, he's an accurate passer. He's got some really good targets. I know they lost a lot of guys from last year. They lost a lot of their production offensively. But watch them in this game. They've got the McGriff kid, Justin McGriff, outside. He's 6'6", 215 pounds. Guy's a really good player. Made a great catch in the end zone for a touchdown last Saturday. And they've got a little slot receiver, Van Leeuwen, or however he says his name. But he's really a nifty player. And, they brought in a Maryland transfer for Brian Cobbs, outstanding receiver. They've got a little running back that ran for 161 last Saturday, Calvin Tyler. So they're pretty explosive offensively. They'll score a lot of points. The thing is I looked at them, I mean, Nathan Carter for UConn ran for 190 yards on 20 carries. So you wonder, Alabama, Jahmyr Gibbs, Chase McClellan, Roydell Williams, Trey Sanders, they're coming at you. So that's really what I kind of see.
Well, that's 9 yards a carry, and I hate to think what Alabama will do when they impose their will on them. And Jahmyr Gibbs, a lot of people are talking about this guy, and he came over from Georgia Tech. He's from Dalton, Georgia, but it's not like Alabama hadn't had good running backs before. But this is going to be a potential, his debut party coming out tonight. I think it's going to be, a lot of Alabama scoring a lot of points. It's just too much Bama and not enough Utah State. So that's what I think it'll be. But you know what? It's college football, and you got to get these games started. And there's a whole lot to talk about. And Jimmy, jump in this conversation with Rodney Orr. Folks, Tider Insider, it's only $48 a year. If you ain't a subscriber to Tider Insider, you're not a Tider Insider. So subscribe to Tider Insider. That was tough. Jimmy, where are you?
That was classic Rob Brown.
Yeah, that's right. I'm trying.
Well, I think Rodney summed it up pretty accurately when he talked about UConn losing their starting quarterback in the first series of the game, yet they still took a 14-0 lead. And had they not lost their starting quarterback, just to be truthful, they most likely would have won the game. And it's also true that Utah State lost a lot of players off that 11-3 team, but that's just part of college football. And even with, those obstacles, UConn still had a chance to win the game late. They were on the short end of a, let's say, controversial pass interference call that allowed the Utah State to get a touchdown and make it a two-score game to allow them kind of to hang on and win it. But Rodney, when I was watching that game, the thing that just got my overwhelming amount of attention was the way that Jim Mora, in just his first game at UConn, had those guys playing. The quality of football they played when, they had dropped out of the AAC and they're trying to operate as an independent in college football at the Division I level. And as well as I do, unless you're Notre Dame or somebody, that's a really tough way to go. So I was really impressed by that. But I think Alabama is basically going to resort to just grind it out, smash mouth football, just ram the ball down Utah State's throat, because UConn had tremendous success with the running game last week. And also, I think Bama's just going to run basic stuff out of their passing game. I don't think they're going to show Texas a lot. They're going to be, really trying to jump out early, like many overwhelming favorites are today. Get a nice lead, get their starters out, and get some of the younger players in that they've been impressed with in the preseason camp, and get them actual game experience, because there's no substitute for playing in front of 100,000 people, because you can try to simulate it, but you don't know what it is like unless you actually do it. And I think they're going to try to get as many players in and get that type of game repetition that you want, and then have as many guys that coming into next week that have actually are able to say that, hey, we've got some game experience, and hey, if I need to come in, I'm not going to be jittery or anything like that. I'm going to be prepared to do what it takes to help my team win. So
you there?
I think there's a bunch of goals. I think not only the players but the coaching staff has today, and I think they're anxious to get to it and see just how far they've come along.
Rodney?
Well, I think too, I'm looking out the window right now, and there's a threat of rain. So that could also be a factor. We'll see. I don't think they expect, by the way, I know a lot of Alabama fans have asked about the weather. I don't think, according to the legendary James Spann,
Yes,
they expect too much of the wet stuff. It's just maybe a passing shower. But so that would be good. I agree with Jimmy. I do think this, though, in terms of the running game. I do think this, though, Rob and Jimmy, listen, you got a lot of new receivers. You got Jermaine Burton. He's obviously transferred in, starting his first game. Trayshawn Holden, starting his first game. Kobe Prentice, straight out of Calera High School. You got other guys that are going to play, Ja'Cory Brooks, maybe Kendrick Law, maybe even Isaiah Bond, true freshman, maybe even more freshmen. We'll see. But you got to get these guys acclimated in the passing game and start developing a chemistry there, too. So I think that's going to be a focus as well. But I do agree with Jimmy on the run game. But yeah, I think they got to get these guys. And there's Alabama's had some injuries, at the receiver position already that are already kind of chipping away. And that's Aaron Anderson, the true freshman, who would have definitely made a big impact. I mean, this guy is going to be a star player, Aaron Anderson. JoJo Earl went down, and when Nick Saban says, I was watching a young man grow up right in front of me as a player, that's a pretty big comment. Yeah. That's a real big comment. And JoJo Earl going down hurt. Now, both those guys are expected back at some point, probably in October for JoJo Earl. Then, there's word, nothing official yet, but had a source tell me last night that Tyler Harrell, the transfer, suffered a similar injury to JoJo Earl's in practice a couple of days ago. So he could be out a while. So you got to get these guys going. You're already, as you guys see, I mean, I don't know what it is now about receivers, but Alabama's having a difficult time. So, we'll see how that unfolds.
In a crazy sort of way, the receivers, in the NFL, a lot of the receivers are the prima donna / problems. And it's like they're becoming what the running back used to be. And they're not built like running backs. And if they're getting so many throws in every game, 180-pound guy versus a 220-pound guy, it can only take so many of those hits across the middle. And I think that's an issue. I mean, look at Alabama last year, SEC championship game. Hell, John Mechie goes down. Alabama won the game, running away. But then they lost Jamison Wilson, first play of the second quarter up in Indianapolis in the national championship game against Georgia. and a non-contact injury on that damn turf. But both of their receivers, I think 176 completions to those two, boatload of touchdowns. And you think, and then think about the running with all that talent. I mean, the running back room last year, Brian Robinson was the only healthy scholarship running back ready to go. So when people say, why do you keep, or how do you continue to recruit like Alabama does, Rodney? And we got a couple of minutes before the break. It's because those guys know in the SEC, as Ben Troop says, the NFL is a collision league. The SEC is a collision league as well. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. But the funny thing is, it's not really funny, but the strange thing is, Jamison Williams and John Mechie's injuries, they weren't even touched.
Yeah.
You said the turf. They weren't even touched. Yeah. I mean, they wrench a knee, getting it locked up in that turf.
Yeah.
I want to say this real quickly, Jimmy and Rob, right before I know you get close to a break. The guy to really kind of keep an eye on, maybe as we move forward for Alabama, that could be interesting. Could be. We'll see. Is Emmanuel Henderson, the true freshman.
Yeah.
Came in here from Geneva County.
Yeah.
5-star type running back. He's moved to wide receiver shortly after he got here. And again, Nick Saban made the comment, not only is he dynamic with the ball in his hands, but he said that we think he's going to help us at the wide receiver position before the season's out. That again, that opens my eyes. Listening to Nick Saban the last 15, 16 years, those kind of comments catch your attention.
Yeah, they do. And if my Alabama geography is correct, I know it well, lived down there for years and down there quite a bit. Geneva. XL's where Leroy Jordan's from, Geneva.
Yep.
Down there near the Florida line. So, look, this is, Rodney, if you can, hold with us. We're going to take a quick commercial break on this Saturday. It is opening day of dove season in a lot of states like Arkansas. MJ sitting out there on a bucket by a power line, some gravel, some water, some trees. Come on in there. Get your fill. 15's the limit. College football starting. People tailgating, people listening all over the place, like Haynes Parker over in Atlanta, new listener that we picked up yesterday. We'll be right back talking more college football on opening big weekend.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
We're talking with the man, Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. It's only $48 a year. You need to be a Tider Insider if you follow the Tide. Taking Emmanuel Henderson, 5-star running back, switching him to wide receiver. I remember some great guys in the past, like Sam Shade out of Winona High School there in Birmingham, that was moved from, a running back to a defensive back. There have been a bunch of those. They make great defensive backs because they're used to contact. Alabama has so much talent, but isn't it foolish when people say, well, you lose one guy, you just put another guy in, it doesn't matter. You can't make up for a lack of experience if you don't have it. And the only way to get it is to put these guys out there in the games. What's the goal for Alabama today? Obviously, number one is, to get a win, but get a really big lead so they can play a lot of guys. Because, I'm with Jimmy. They don't probably have to show too much But Utah State's pretty good. They're going to come at them with everything they got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think so. But again, I say this too: you've got an offensive line that's trying to, got to develop. You've got the receivers. I didn't even mention Camelot too. The tight end is out. So you've got Robbie Oots and a couple of 2 or 3 young players that are going to get opportunities to play. Hopefully, Latu will be back next week for the Texas game. So I think there's a lot of cohesiveness there that you need to start to develop. And so I think that's the one thing offensively, the way kind of the way I see it. And I dare anyone to ask Nick Saban about playing backup players. I don't know if you've ever seen his response to that, but yeah, he's not too keen on that. But in terms of asking him and assuming that there's going to be a big lead, whatever. But no, I think, like I said, I think there's a lot of cohesiveness that needs to be developed on the offense. That's in the run game, throwing the football, offensive line, all of those things, and I think this is one thing. I'm going to watch 3 spots, Rob and Jimmy: offensive line, wide receivers, and the corners. We haven't really talked about the defense, but the corners. Yeah. Because right now they've got 4 guys bracketed. Of course, Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terry and Arnold are expected to start today. And then bracketed with them, Eli Ricks and Kareem Jackson. So those are 4 guys that I think all 4 will probably play tonight.
Yeah.
But that's the spot I'm watching defensively.
Well, what about the guy? Didn't they just pick up somebody last night in the portal, a big, rangy, tall defensive back, Jimmy Hodge out of Chicago? Jimmy's
gonna play both ways.
Hey, yeah, from the man cave, but anyway, yeah, it was interesting, Rodney. You talked about Emmanuel Henderson because I was curious if that tells you that Saban would still like to see more evidence, maybe than he has in preseason camp of just big playability from his wide receivers. But because when you talk about Henderson, he was very highly touted as a running back. But I got to tell you, when I saw that initial depth chart and I saw Trey Sanders listed at number 4, I went, good grief, that's a pretty deep position they have there. And you get a player of Henderson's skill and athleticism, you got to find a place for him to contribute. And evidently, Saban sees a lot of qualities he possesses that could be used at wide receiver. So I was kind of curious about that because I thought by the end of the season last year that Sanders had gotten better, I thought, virtually every day. And a lot of people thought he'd never come back at all from that horrific car wreck. But I really thought he was just getting closer and closer and closer to being almost 100%. And so, it just comes to show you that things aren't always what they seem. You've always got to be changing your thought process, or at least be flexible about it, and try to find every single advantage you can to make your team better, and try to find players that might be better off at another position to make your team as good as it can possibly be.
Rodney?
Well,
I
would agree. I mean, yeah, certainly. And I think that's really a good comment there, Jimmy, about always looking to find, and not just kind of settling on what you have or what seems apparent, whatever. He's always looking. And you know what? That's why nobody's position is safe, to be honest with you. And just like his approach in recruiting is, I'm always trying to recruit and find your replacement, because he's always trying to get better. And so, yeah, but I think with Emmanuel Henderson, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, it just really, that comment caught my attention a couple of weeks ago when he said, how dynamic he is as a kick returner potentially. And then with him appearing on the depth chart the way he did. And listen, there's some other touted receivers that they brought in. I give Shaz Preston for one, true freshman, that didn't appear on the depth chart. And I think Shaz Preston's going to be a really good player. But I think probably the two surprises right now at the receiver spot are Trayshawn Holden, who had a big scrimmage 2 weeks ago. He had 3 touchdown receptions in that scrimmage, 45, 60, and 75. Now, if he can produce those kind of big plays, he's not really considered a big play guy. I mean, coming into this camp, he was a guy that, he's got great height, 6'3". He's very athletic. I mean, he's a guy that, if you remember that 8A game a couple of years ago, he made a twisting catch in the end zone that was ruled out of bounds. I mean, it was an incredible athletic catch. But I mean, just as a guy who can kind of put the secondary on their heels, in terms of his speed, or as they like to say, take the top off of it. I don't know that that's really what he's considered. But to display big playability in the scrimmage was really something that caught my attention. And then Kobe Prentice, the true freshman, just kind of electric speed. Again, you talked about speed. That electric speed that he has and quickness. He ran a 4.38 at Bama's camp twice. He was committed to Maryland originally at Mike Loxley and came to Bama's camp, ran a 4.38, made him run it again, and he did it again. So Alabama offered him. And now here he is as a true freshman. He's going to start tonight. Pretty amazing. So, again, I think the receiver spot's something I'm really going to watch. I'm really, really interested to see the receivers and, the offensive line, obviously, and the corners on defense.
Well, when you talk about Kool-Aid McKinstry, Eli Ricks, you got that kind of talent on there. As good as they may be, and they are, it's going to start up front. And when you got a pass rush with Dallas Turner, Will Anderson, and others, that's why this defense is so the anticipation that it could be one of the better ones that Alabama's had. And, when you the more pressure you put on the quarterback, the quicker they've got to get rid of the ball. And it's not always their best decision time when they're under pressure. I mean, Will Anderson had 17 sacks last year. Still, I mean, the record for Alabama in a single season was 1986. Derek Thomas, 27 sacks. If you look, Rodney, across the board at most schools in the SEC, 27 sacks is the career number of sacks, the record at most schools in the SEC. So Will Anderson this year is going to push those numbers, I think, don't you?
Mm-hmm. How do you get 27 sacks in the 80s?
It's just, that was just
any season, but in the 80s?
Yeah, you can't make that up. Yeah.
I mean, this is when it was I formation football.
Yeah.
And hey, how about Dallas Turner, though? I mean, Dallas Turner came in and only played half a season last year and had 8.5 sacks. And now, Push Braswell, you throw him in the mix, there's 3 guys. I think you're going to see all 3 of those guys on the field together as pass rushers. Yeah. They may slide Anderson in some, line Braswell up on his hip and come from the outside. And then on the other side, you've got Dallas Turner. I tell you another player to watch on the outside. I don't know how much opportunity he'll get, but watch number 19 if he gets in the game. Redshirt freshman Keanu Coote.
Yeah.
He's a guy that they've got a lot of, there's been a lot of hype about. So, it's going to be, like you said, Rob, if you, what Keith Jackson used to say, it's kind of hard to complete them when you're on your back.
Yeah. Well, along with, whoa, Nelly.
Yeah. So we'll see. Pass rush could certainly help out that secondary.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rodney, I wanted to also mention an area of interest that I have today is to see what that nose tackle position looks
Yes.
like with DJ Dale
Mhm.
and Jaheim
Mhm.
Otis, because Otis has been one of those true freshmen that's been the freshmen that have been the talk of this program. He's
Mhm.
lost somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 80 pounds, and
Whoa.
some insiders have said up to this point he's been almost unblockable.
Yeah, that's another one, Jimmy. That's a good one because I'm very excited to see him, number 91. Rob and Jimmy, when he committed to Alabama, he's a true freshman. P. Golden recruited him out of Columbia, Mississippi. And I called his coach the morning he committed, and we talked, and he said, listen, he said, the reason I'm really think he's made a good decision here, and I think he'll stick with this decision, is because Alabama has the best strength and conditioning program, the best nutritional program in the country. And he said that if he got into that program, Alabama's program, that they could help him learn to manage his weight. Because listen, at 400 pounds, he can move. He could move. He came in here, Rob and Jimmy, at 416 pounds.
Good.
In January. I think the last time he tweeted something about his weight, he was like 349. Yeah. So that's 51 and 16. That's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
That's 67 pounds.
Yeah, sure.
But he's really quick. He's very quick. He's dominant for a young player. I mean, he's got potentially dominant ability. And so I'm interested to see Jaheim Otis. There's a reason why he's already listed co-starter.
Well, look, Rodney, it's going to be a lot of things to watch. And no matter who the opponent, there's a lot of things you're watching. You just piqued a lot of people's interest. And all right, look, we've run out of time. We're going to our next segment here. But tell people, again, exactly how they can become a subscriber to Tider Insider. And I want to thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday. It is a great day, and we'll do it again next week.
SIDELINESSaturday.com. It's only $48 a year. That's just $4 a month, and you can get instant access with your credit card, or there is an address there to send a check if you prefer. It gives you all our premium information, but also our All Sports Forum, which is our community of Alabama fans. And I'm telling you, that All Sports Forum, I'm on there a lot, sharing a lot of information. But there's tons of people in there sharing information and what have you. Including like the Tyler Harrell injury that I mentioned earlier. But all of that right there on TiderInsider.com.
Rodney, again, thank you. Have a great weekend and look forward to hearing from you again next week.
Okay, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Let's switch gears. Head to Stuart Carter, the Stat Tiger, one of the guys on the inside of the Auburn Tigers team down there. We're going to be talking SEC and college football today. And Stuart, it's a great day. Anybody that's complaining, well, they must be sound asleep, because what do you complain about? It's opening day of dove season in a lot of states. It's the first big weekend. I'm going to call it week 2. I'm going to go out. I don't call that week 0. That's silly. It's week 2, but it's the first big weekend of college football. And Stuart, Auburn plays Mercer. Bama's playing Utah State. Tennessee, and you pointed this out throughout the last month or so. Offensively, we're probably going to see numbers the best we've ever seen in college football. Well, Tennessee put 59 points on Ball State. Missouri, 52-24 over La Tech. Vanderbilt. Now stop the presses here. Last weekend, 63 points on as my old coach Reed used to call it, Hawaii, on Hawaii, 63-10 last week. Man, what in the wide world of sports is going on here, Stuart? But only you can tell us. Welcome.
Hey, great to be back. And I made that comment about it possibly being a record-setting year in the Southeastern Conference, primarily because of all the returning quarterbacks or starting quarterbacks that each team has within the conference. There were some transfer portal guys that came in, might not have started for the same team last year, but they had starting experience. So we're seeing that. someone asked me this week on the Inside the Auburn Tiger board that if I thought defending offenses is becoming much more of a challenge today than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago. And it is. We're seeing more spread offenses, system-oriented offenses. You're seeing more dual threat quarterbacks, which puts more pressure on the defenses. Everyone's running some aspect of tempo, no huddle, hurry up. Some are doing it a lot. Some are doing it in stages of the game. And so now you're seeing the defenses, they're countering it with you're no longer putting your best 11 out there all the time. You're putting your best situational players out there.
Yeah.
And you're seeing more 4-2-5 defenses, fewer linebackers on the field, more DBs to counter that. And so it's a great chess match because when you see that, then you see some of these system-oriented offenses leaning more towards the run to take advantage of the smaller bodies that are out there on the field. But, yeah, a lot of points scored. It's, last weekend it kicked off, and then this weekend you got all your big games. And, of course, in the SEC, the biggest game, obviously, is Georgia and Oregon. Both of them are highly ranked teams. I'm really looking forward to that Utah-Florida matchup personally.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Stuart, Jimmy, we're going to take a quick break. We're broadcasting live, RedRiverFordToyota.com in Wynn, Arkansas, open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Got a lot to talk about with Stat Tiger after this quick commercial break. It's game day, folks. If you ain't fired up, get fired up.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynn, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, we got Stat Tiger on here. Jimmy Hodge, Frank Duffy will be joining us here momentarily from, I believe he's in New Orleans. So he's going to be down there at his condo in the French Quarter. Everyone needs a condominium in the French Quarter. I guarantee he's going to have some wild stories to talk about. Stuart, I want to throw it. You're right. You talked about everybody plays some form of tempo, hurry up, no huddle. Go back 30 years ago, defensive tackles, a 4-year starter would have between 300 and 400 tackles. Now a 4-year starter, a 3-year starter on the defensive line might have 120, 150, because back then the game came right at you. Now it's all about coming at you and then rolling out with an RPO, misdirection. There's a lot has changed, but you still got to have the big guys that are athletic and can move on your front line, don't you? That's never going to change.
No, but in fact, probably one of the things that hindered the Auburn defense last year was kind of a lack of rotation up front.
Yeah,
and that came back to bite him in the rear end in a couple of ball games. Not only is playing well up front vital, with these teams going hurry up, you just have to play some type of rotation so your starters are fresh late in the game.
Well, when you look at teams in the SEC, like Ole Miss, they have not traditionally had depth, and we talked with several folks that cover Ole Miss for us. They think they've got 14 defensive linemen that are quality SEC players. And I'm talking that you have to go back 30 years ago, Norman Hand and Tim Bowen, those kind of guys. And they don't think that any of them are top 10 picks in the first round, but a lot of second, third, and fourth round picks. So, that changes. And Ole Miss, most people pick Ole Miss to win 8 games this year. Well, if they get the quarterback situation fixed, whether it's Jackson Dart or Luke Altmaier or Dent or whoever it is, and they got a defense like that, with Partridge is going to be the coordinator. He's new. DJ Durkin's gone to A&M. I think that changes my victory outlook for Ole Miss because, again, front 7 depth, 2 and 3 deep is what separates the SEC from the rest of the conferences in America. You look at the top half of the SEC, nobody has that kind of talent on defense like they do, Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I pointed this out last week. We're seeing more passing now in the Southeastern Conference than we ever have. But even though everyone's throwing the ball more and putting an emphasis on their offense in terms of the passing game, you still have to play sound run defense. And like I pointed out last week, over the last 5 years, just looking at the 14 teams in the SEC, when they hold their opposition under 140 yards rushing, they're winning 80% of their games. So that's still a vital role. And again, that's coming back to you got to play sound defense up front. I mean, the skill players are great, receivers, quarterbacks, running backs, but if you can't block them up front and you can't tackle them up front, schemes doesn't matter at that point. You can throw all that out if you're not playing well up front.
Yeah, and top to bottom, the SEC. I mean, you know what Alabama's got, what Georgia had last year with Jordan Davis at 6'7", 340 pounds. They listed him at. I think he was a couple of pounds bigger than that, depending on what he ate for breakfast. But that guy could move. And he was a basketball guy when he came out of high school out of Charlotte, North Carolina, as a 3-star. And he played 35 or 40% of the snaps, but his job was to put teams in 3rd and long. Frank Duffy's on with us down in New Orleans, Jimmy Hodge. And Frank, jump in here real quick. We got Stat Tiger on. We're talking about trends in college football in the 22 season, especially defensive fronts. And you being an LSU guy, your history is one of the best of any history of the defensive fronts in the history of college football.
Well, and let me tell you, I was having lunch with a buddy of mine yesterday. We're all in town, of course, for the FSU game on tomorrow, and we were talking. I think this might be one of LSU's deepest defensive lines we've ever had, with Ojulari and Gay on the corners. I go back to the Glenn Dorsey year of 2007 and the 2011 team, but for depth, for the the first and second string of our defensive line, I mean this year we're stacked. It truly is the strength of our team this year.
Stuart, I mean, hearing him say that, and then again, people picking LSU, what's the number? 7 or 8 wins. What's going on here? More teams are getting better defensive linemen, but now you got to be able to score 45, 48 points a game in the SEC. That's what Bama did 6 years ago. They went from scoring about 34 a game to 45, 48 a game. You see those kind of numbers jumping up this year? This is big.
Oh, yeah. Last year, there were 67 teams that averaged at least 400 yards per game on total offense by the end of the year. Now, this is at the FBS level.
Yeah.
And there were 52 teams that averaged at least 30 points per game. Well, if you roll the clock back 20 years ago, it was only 43 teams that averaged over 400 yards per game and 37 that averaged 30 points per game. So, yeah, we're seeing a lot more points. But, the game itself still comes down to the basic fundamentals of can you block your opponent and can you tackle your opponent? Now, schematically, teams are adjusting in terms of recruiting what's more important. If you're playing within the SEC, there's more of a passing flavor. There's more of a hurry-up concept. So your defense has to be quick and fast. And to add on to the comment made about LSU's defensive line, same thing falls forward for Auburn. I really think the strength of this football team is their defensive line. What I'm looking for this year, though, there's been a change at defensive coordinator. Auburn played a lot of zone coverage last year, had a lot of 3-man rush to where they were just trying to keep the quarterback within the pocket and not scramble around. I think Auburn's going to be a lot more aggressive this year. You're going to see some more blitz packages. You're going to see them changing up from a 4-2 alignment to a 3-down alignment, sometimes to a bare front. And that's the biggest thing I'm looking for. The players are there. Auburn's got good depth. And if anything, they've added some interior guys from the transfer portal, which I think is going to make this defensive line even better than last year's, which was pretty good.
Yeah, and Auburn, again, one of those schools that always has a lot of talent on the front group. Jimmy Hodge, you've been watching football a long time. I know you got some questions for Stuart Stat Tiger Carter.
Well, again, I can't help but go back to the Iron Bowl when, Schmedding put in that blitz-heavy defensive scheme that gave Bama all kinds of problems, especially with the pass rush at right tackle in particular. They registered 7 sacks on Bryce Young, and if not for Young's tremendous athletic ability, it could have been almost twice that. And it just seems to me, if you've got the players on that side of the ball with the speed, the skill level, the athletic ability to excel at that part of the game, I mean, you've got to use that and certainly increase that style of play on that side of the ball, because again, we've said it forever. The best pass defense that there is when you put the quarterback on his back or make him throw the ball early. And I just sense that this Auburn team, with the change at defensive coordinator, is going to be much more of a, I think, aggressive blitzing team than what you saw last year, which was much more of a read and react team.
Yeah, speaking of which, and I don't want to pile on Derek Mason. There were some good things Derek Mason did in his 1 year as a defensive coordinator last year, but Oklahoma State opened up with a smaller school opponent-wise, and they won the game, but they gave up 44 points, 550 yards, and 30 first downs. Now, I will say this. Derek Mason will tell you himself, it takes a year for his players to react and feel comfortable in his defense, because they do so many different things. And, at the college level, for me personally, if I'm a head coach, I get a little nervous about that, because you only have these guys, especially if they're really good, you may only have them for 3 years. And if it's taken them a year to learn the system, that could be a concern. But I think you're absolutely right, Jimmy. I think the approach this year on defense will simply be, look, we think we have the horses to be very aggressive and cause havoc in the backfield. So why not take advantage of that?
Well, I agree. Mark Green, the original blogger, our friend, used to always tell me, he said, Rob, it takes about 17, 18 games for a defense to be fully absorbed by the players. So, Derek Mason was there for 13 games. There were good moments, and then there was the Mississippi State game. So, in his defense, I don't pile. I mean, I like the guy. Jimmy and I both thought it was a really good hire. But in this world that we live in now, who's going to give you the patience to figure it out? Look at Pete Golding in Alabama, and he's gotten better every year. And now in his 4th year, he may have a defense for the ages. So we'll see about that. But Frank Duffy, jump in here, man. You're down in New Orleans. Are you in the quarter? We're having a little bit of trouble with your video. We'll work on that. But I haven't heard a marching band, the St. Aug 100, dancing bears, carnies and stuff yelling. Where are they?
I've had 2 trash trucks and a beer truck come by that I politely muted that you guys would have to enjoy that. But yeah, I'm sitting here on my balcony here in the French Quarter. I'm on the uptown side of the Batava building, the city building. And it's a beautiful morning. I flew in actually yesterday after spending some time with my son by his university. And when I flew in, I was on a plane with a lot of Florida State fans. And I had my LSU on. There was only a couple of LSU coming from that part of the world, and a lot of Seminoles. So, they're walking the quarter right now. It was a fun day yesterday, fun night last night. I expect tonight to be the same. And But by come Sunday around 3 or 4 o'clock, people's going to start getting their game faces on. I'm sure we're going to be hearing some of the war chants, and there'll be a lot of Go Tigers. So it's a fun time to have college football back. And I do love these off-site games because, there's almost a early bowl feel to them. But unlike the bowl games where there's only four teams, now soon to be 12, that have a chance to win it all, these types of bowl games to kick off the season, there's still anticipation. There's still an excitement in the air, and there's certainly that here.
Well, I know one thing. You were on that plane with all those Florida State fans. Did you feel out of place in any way when you weren't wearing jorts and a tank top and a gold chain?
Yeah, and by the way, the Florida Gators are not the only ones that have a corner on the jorts market.
Absolutely
That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely not.
But I did joke with them. I said, by the way, they were giving me, they were needling me a little bit because my LSU shirt. And I told them, I said, y'all better get this in here because the second this plane lands, you're going to be the ones that are outnumbered.
Well, listen, they're going to Florida State. I've been to a lot of games down there and played.
They travel well.
They do, and they're fun, man. I'll never forget in the French Quarter when they beat Auburn 13-7 in the Sugar Bowl. All night long, people come up to me, Florida State fans, say, "Excuse me, sir, what time do you have on your watch?" And I'd say, and I'd look at it, and they go, "Oh, it's prime time." Oh, Stuart, jump back in.
They're a good group. I like their fans. They're good-natured fans.
They are.
And when you're playing somebody outside of the conference, it's not that. Oh man, we got to win this game. We want to win the game, obviously, right? But it's not that. It's not like the first week of November when you're playing Alabama and everything's riding on it, or you're going into Jordan Hare. I mean, so it's going to be a fun time. The Superdome will be rocking. I say it'll probably be about 65-35 LSU fans. We obviously, show up in that place. That's our home away from home. I did remind a few Florida State fans the last time I was in there watching LSU. I did remind them that there was purple and gold confetti all over the floor of the Superdome. So, we're used to that place, and we're going to give my best.
All I can say is, Frank, when you left 2 years ago, Stuart and Jimmy, he said, "I'm giving them a hall pass." You told your wife this for the next 4 or 5 years, and since you left there, LSU's been in a tailspin. I think you going back, maybe you're going to put LSU back on the winning tracks. It's all on Frank Duffy.
I will tell you this. I prepared better for the last 2 seasons than Coach O did. I will tell you that. I was much more prepared going into those games last year than he was.
I agree. Stuart, let's talk. Again, you got these numbers that you're giving. I mean, I feel like everybody out there listening, of course, www.sidelines.live and YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever. Take notes, man. Stuart, as Buddy Martin likes to say, get up here and talk some more, preach from the pulpit, because I feel like SpongeBob SquarePants absorbing all this stuff.
Well, this week, 24/7 Sports, Mark Murphy from Inside the Auburn Tiger magazine, he posted 24/7 Sports talent-wise roster, and it was a composite of all the football teams this year, 2022, modeling their talent level on the team combined total for the last, 4 to 5 recruiting cycles. And so wasn't surprised to see the results. Alabama was number 1 at the top. Georgia was number 2. Ohio State was 3. A&M with this recent class jumped up to number 4, and Clemson was number 5. What I found very interesting, though, was I looked at this composite of talent and compared it to the current Associated Press top 25 poll. So in the AP poll right now, they had Alabama coming into this week, number 1, Ohio State number 2, Georgia number 3, Clemson number 4, and Notre Dame number 5. And so I looked at the top 25 teams, and BYU was 25th, Houston was number 24, Cincinnati was number 23. Those 3 teams are respectively ranked 104th in talent, BYU is. Houston was 55th, and Cincinnati is 49th. Wake Forest came in at number 22. They were ranked 68th in talent. So when I first noticed that, I said, well, how many of the so-called talented teams aren't even in the top 25? And I was actually surprised. You've got Texas, who, according to this composite, is the 6th most talented team in college football this year. They're not even in the top 25 right now. LSU's number 8, Florida's number 12, North Carolina is 16th, Auburn is 17th, Tennessee is 19th, South Carolina 20th, Washington 21, Stanford number 23, and Nebraska number 24. Of course, Nebraska lost.
Stuart, hold those comments. We got to take a quick break. This is incredible stuff. We're going to come back after the break. Folks, this is what we love. These numbers, they reveal everything. More after this quick message on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Stuart, keep rolling on those numbers on that talent composite. This is really the stuff that we love to hear about.
Well, I think when you factor, what you have to look at is, right. For instance, right now, out of the top 30 most talented teams, according to the 247 talent composite, 12 of them are SEC teams, which should come to no surprise. We know the Southeastern Conference is the most dominant conference in college football when it comes to recruiting, so that's not a shocker. So when you compare the top 25 most talented teams and you're looking at the current top 25 ranked teams, there's other factors involved. Obviously, strength of schedule plays a huge thing. For instance, Wake Forest, who only is ranked 68th nationally in talent, right now they're ranked number 22 in the country, and there's a good chance they could win 8 or 9 games in the ACC this year. But if they were in the Southeastern Conference playing an SEC schedule, now you're probably looking at, all right, now they're more closer to a 5 to 7 win team. So obviously strength of schedule makes a difference. And that's why teams like LSU, Florida, Auburn, Tennessee that aren't currently in the top 25, at least one, if not maybe 2 of those teams is eventually going to work its way up into the top 25. Yeah. Now, how long they can stay remains to be seen.
Frank, you look at those numbers, and Jimmy, again, Texas every year that they started calling Mac Brown Coach February when they started getting their classes for the coming year, committed in February. LSU always is going to have talent. And I think, Stuart, I agree. Jimmy and Frank, when you get down on field level at an SEC game and you see these athletes, historically, the most physically impressive that I've ever was always Florida and LSU.
Well, that was the biggest lament, Rob, that we had during the Les Miles era. That was the exact same thing. And look, granted, we won a national championship and we went to and played for another one. But that was the thing about Les Miles. Les Miles had so much talent, and they really did underperform. I think, Stat Tiger, sir, you need to call that the less with more and more with less category, those numbers, because that's really what it's telling you. It's telling you that, some programs are not coaching these kids up. They're getting great talent to come in on the recruiting trail, but they're not coaching them up. And to the other standpoint, you've got some of these other teams that are loaded with 3 stars, and they're playing over their head in some of their respective conferences. Yes, schedule has a lot to do with it, but you can't dismiss what some of these teams are doing. I mean, look at Old Dominion last night upsetting Virginia Tech, right out the gate. Look at Illinois, who looked great.
And that was at home. Don't forget, they were at home.
I know. But look at Wyoming. Got hell beat out by Illinois, and Illinois comes out and loses to what was it, Indiana last night. So
right.
It's a you got to have talent, yes, but it's what you do with that talent. And Rob always talks about this, and I love it. He goes, "It's not how you start the race; it's how you finish the race, and it's how you run that race." And you're right, Seth. I mean, that's very eye-opening. How many of the talent-rich teams are not in the top 25? I do think Florida, and I do think LSU, and with the possibility of Auburn, who I think is going to surprise this year. I think we got a chance to make it up there, but you're not going to start out that way. Not with the schedules that you're looking at. You're right.
Yeah, I think, and a perfect example when he brought up the fact of coaching, yes, that makes a heck of a difference. You just look at LSU, since we're on that topic, go back to 2019. It was the perfect storm. You bring in the right guy in Joe Brady, who comes in, add some passing concepts in there. You sprinkle in the already pre-existing talent at wide receiver.
Yep.
Clearly the quarterback was underrated, transferring in from Ohio State. And he's now having a good NFL solid career. It was the perfect storm.
It was. And Steve Ensminger, the offensive coordinator, also being big enough to say, man, we have something special here. Let me back up out of the way, get my ego out of the way, and let this kid go to work. But it was also, Tag, I'll tell you, it was also them throwing 10,000 balls up by the Charlie McClendon football facility in a long, hot summer. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Terrace Marshall with Joe Burrow and Clyde Edwards-Helaire out the backfield, throwing 10,000 balls in that Louisiana summer heat. That's what also did it. But you're exactly right. That coaching dynamic that came in, and all the tumblers clicked. And you were talking a little bit before. I was thinking about this. The reason why the offensive numbers are off the friggin' boards is when a team like LSU, with our penchant for 3 yards in a cloud of dust, do Les Miles' era, can come out with a 2019 offense. That's what's also skewed those numbers. And there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. But you're right. You don't get those numbers unless you've got the talent, but you also have to have like that line play like you and Rob and Jimmy were talking about. You've got to have the horses up front, and that's what LSU, most people don't realize. LSU won the Offensive Line of the Year award, the Moore Award, that year that we hit 2019.
Yep.
It's
I had one more thing to it, and we talked, Rob. We talked about this last week. When you start looking at the recruiting services, and when they say, "Okay, guys, a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star," and I brought this up, if you're rated a 3-star coming out of high school, a lot of people initially go, "Oh, well, he's an average player." No, that's not what they're saying. They're saying this kid has the potential to even play at the NFL, but it's just going to take him a couple of years to develop. So to get back to the original point of, there are a lot of teams in the Southeastern Conference loaded at minimum with 3-star talent.
Yeah.
It's when you catch these teams of, all right, do they have a lot of juniors and seniors that have already developed? And that's where Auburn's in that cycle now. That's why I think Auburn's going to be a little bit better than a lot of people are forecasting.
I agree.
And I think it's because of that. No, they're not loaded with a ton of 4- and 5-star guys, but they got a lot of 3-star guys that have played a lot of football at Auburn. And I would rather take a well-developed 3-star junior college player than a 5-star freshman coming fresh out of high school.
Well, I think when it comes to talent, teams like Texas is one that's just loaded with talent, and they're kind of like a kid that's never had a job in his life, and he graduates from college, and they hand him the family business that's worth $250 million. He was born on home plate and thought he hit a grand slam. Okay, he has no clue. Versus the guy that I think about friends of mine that have worked in family businesses, and I think about Big Daddy. He literally had to start out sweeping the floor, cleaning the bathrooms. He worked his way up, but he earned the respect of all the employees. That's what it's like with talent, Stuart. I mean, I think this stuff is so fascinating, and we don't want to keep you. I know you got stuff to do. You're probably got some chores to do, and you got to. It's Saturday. I mean, it's opening day of college football season. But man, when you start looking at these numbers, they just blow your mind. There's so many possibilities, but if you're not developing the players, it's like leaving the groceries in the trunk for a week in July. The green flies are the only ones that'll prosper. And it's just, and you see a lot of wasted talent, Stuart. And man, I think that you're right. And I look around, a guy like Sam Pittman, he comes into Arkansas and he says, hey, this isn't a 5-year rebuild project. I'm not going to say that we're going to win when my guys get here. Everybody I need to win with is in this locker room right here and right now. Stuart,
start grading me today. That's what he said. Start grading me today.
Yeah, that goes a long way. And here's a question. Fun fact: every LSU offensive lineman from that team made an NFL roster that year. That being, that's a cool stat from one of our listeners, Robert Ward in Nashville. And I tell you what, Stuart. Parting comments, and we'll let you go. And I'm so wound up right now. I'm making JoJo the circus clown look tame.
Well, you know what? And for me personally, what makes college football so special is, you can't look at last year's results and go, okay, well, based on that, this is what's going to happen this year. This isn't the NFL where you have players on your roster for 7 to 10 years. I mean, the dynamics of a roster of your starting 22 can change significantly within 1 year.
It's like a fingerprint. It really is.
And so you can't look at LSU and go, well, they struggled last year. Whole new different coaching staff, whole new approach, new coordinators. They've added to the roster. They've cut some meat off the roster. And it's that way across the SEC. And that's what makes it so entertaining. You could make a good argument that, LSU's the second best team in the conference, or you could make an argument that Auburn could eventually be the second or third best team. And right now you just have to wait for it all to play out because there's so many unpredictable factors. What LSU's new coaching staff is going to be like. Same thing with Auburn. They got 2 new coordinators, but that expression of you don't want to lose games on the sideline. And that's that fear of, sometimes you have a roster that's capable of winning 9 to 11 games, but you lose games on the sideline because inadequate coaching. And so
the crazy thing about the SEC West this year, you could make an argument for every, well, with the exception of 2 teams, every of the other 6 teams, you can make an argument why they should be the second team in the SEC West and why they should be the 6th team in the SEC West.
Exactly.
All 6 of them. You can do that for all 6 of them.
Jimmy, jump in here, man. I hope you've got a question for Stuart before he goes. But I mean, Stuart, this is the only thing better than this is watching a football game with Beth Mowins on it. But Jimmy, come on in here.
Oh boy. Well, I got to say, just these first 2 nights of football have really set the tone that this is just going to be a crazy college football season. You look at last night, believe it or not, Virginia Tech was actually on the road at Old Dominion.
Yeah, that's yep.
And they had like
on the field
15 penalties, 5 turnovers,
4 picks.
They hand delivered. Listen to this. When's the last time you remember in college football you're lining up for a 25-yard field goal attempt, and the snap goes like 6 yards over the holder's head. The kicker's trying to, instead of falling on the fumble, pick it up. He knocks it backwards. An Old Dominion DB picks it up and turns it into a touchdown.
That snap looked like it came out of a jugs machine.
Oh, good grief,
Hey, no preseason games in college.
And Virginia Tech virtually snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the game, Old Dominion has like a 4th and 1 for maybe Virginia Tech's 45. They have the guy dead to rights for a 3-yard loss. He gets hit, bounces off of it, keeps his leg moving, makes the first down, and then they make a kind of a alley-oop jump ball catch at the 1-yard line and pull it out at the end. And then I tell you what, Illinois, Indiana, Basilek, came from Missouri. I mean, he missed so many wide open receivers all night you couldn't keep track of it. But on the final drive, he's like 7 for 8. They drive down there and win the game with 15 seconds left. But Illinois, poor Illinois, man. They get a touchdown taken away from them that turned out to be the difference in the game. Yeah. This guy makes a sensational catch in the end zone. I mean, he held the ball for like 5 seconds. Even Dean Blandino, the former supervisor of NFL officials, said, I don't know how long you have to have control of it. I mean, I thought he was going to have to autograph it before, they gave him a completion. They go to replay after about 2 minutes, and they call it incomplete, and it turned out to be the difference in the game. Yeah. And Indiana won it at the end, but I felt great for Tom Allen because they had so many gut-wrenching losses Indiana did last year, and it was a huge win for them. But it just tells you, though, that no matter what conference you're in, so many of these teams are just dead even with the transfer portal, all the new players coming in, replacing 25% of your roster every year. And it literally does come down in so many of these games to 1 or 2 plays that decide the outcome.
Yeah. I mean, most games are decided on 4 or 5 plays. And that's just the amazing part of it. And Stuart, we all know this too. You get, what was the statistic? One last thing. You gave a number out about Auburn's starting quarterback, TJ Finley. If he'd completed an additional 7 passes last year, what would his QB rating have been?
Yeah, his quarterback rating would have jumped from like 121 to like 138. And that's and for Auburn's opening game against Mercer, I just want to make 2 quick comments. The biggest thing I'm going to be looking for tonight at Jordan-Hare is how does TJ Finley throw the ball, and how effective is the passing game within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage? And
his accuracy. Yep, you're right.
Yep. And the reason why this is, last year, 40% of Auburn's passes came within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. You want your quarterback to complete 80 to 85% of those. Finley only completed 72%. And some of that's because he's so tall and his release, but they've worked on his mechanics in that regard. So that's the big thing I'll be looking for. If you just take his quarterback rating out of the first 5 yards of the line of scrimmage and you swapped out with Jarrett Stidham's numbers from 2017, that would have increased his quarterback rating into the 145 range. It could make a huge difference if he just is more efficient throwing the ball short.
Yeah.
And what he really didn't do that first year at LSU, which he also has to do for Auburn, if Auburn wants to be successful, is when he hits those short passes, he's got to lead his people. He can't
exactly
from behind running backs or, on the slant, and he can't make the receiver stop to get it. That's what he really didn't do that first year. You saw glimpses that he improved on it last year, but he still was missing too many guys. But if he hits them, he's got to get it to him in stride. So if they catch it within that 5 to 7 yards, if they don't break stride, they go upfield.
Yeah,
exactly. And in all fairness to him, schematically speaking, a lot of the passes, the short passes where quarterbacks are running, where receivers were just checking down and picking a spot like in the zone and squaring up their shoulders. They, coaches got to help their players too, like we discussed, and they got to create those opportunities where the receivers are running east and west and north and south. So a 3-yard route can at least turn into an 8-yard route, and that can make a huge difference. 2nd and 2 is a lot better than 2nd and 7.
Yeah, Stuart,
separation.
Yeah, Stuart. I mean, look, we got the round. Buddy Martin is out today. He's got to got some stuff he's got to do. So the round table is on fire right now. Rapid fire round table. Stuart, you're welcome to stay if you can, but I know you've got a lot to do, but if you want to stay, we can talk to you for a week without stopping.
And Rob, I need Stuart to give me what I'm calling the
hold that thought. Stuart, we got one more question for you. We're going to come back after the break. This is Sidelines on Saturday. Hello, everybody out there on Lake Martin right now. It is a beautiful day. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, Go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
But this reminds me of when Lionel Richie came to Live at the Garden a couple of years ago here in Memphis. I mean, they just kept encore. They wouldn't let him go. Stuart, now listen, everybody listening, Stuart and I and Frank and Jimmy, I got friends when I got to Auburn who remembered the Commodores who lived a mere 19 miles away over in Tuskegee would play band parties at Auburn and Tuscaloosa and everywhere like that. And I'm going to tell you what, Lionel Richie.
Sail On.
Yeah.
Sail On, Brick House.
Yeah.
I mean, they're great. With Easy like Sunday morning. Absolutely.
And who will ever forget Eddie Murphy doing Buckwheat on Saturday Night Live, man, 3 times a lady. I mean, they you know, I'm going to tell you one thing. The Commodores, they were one of my favorite bands of all time. But Lionel Richie has not lost a thing. And I've seen Robert Plant. We were 25 feet from him. Holy cow. He may have the greatest voice of any singer since Boxcar Willie, but I digress. But Stat Tiger, woo, rain on.
I do have something for Stat Tiger. I got to tell you, if you could come up weekly with what I'm calling the Stat Tiger slide rule 2-team parlay of the day, and what I'm hoping you can come up for me and Jimmy so that we can, pay for our scholarships and our kids going to school and, all of our recreational money. What's a parlay, a 2-team parlay that you can give us that, in essence, and I'm going to put in quotation, jumps off the stat pages today? Do you have a couple that jump off the stat pages for recreational purposes only?
Yes, for medicinal purposes only.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you what, and if you're just talking just within the Southeastern Conference, obviously that LSU Florida State matchup is very intriguing. I will say this, and you brought up, Frank, you brought this up, or no, I'm sorry, Jimmy brought this up in terms of poor tackling. We've just seen that deteriorate over the last 10 years, and part of that is teams at the college level are being, the NCAA is cutting back the amount of time you can spend with your players. Yeah. So the emphasis on fundamentals has cut back, and it's really exposed early in the season when these season openers. You're just seeing horrible tackling. Great effort, but just horrible tackling, just mistakes. Auburn's playing Mercer today. I believe they're a 31.5-point favorite. They should easily win this game. But I remind everyone, they played Mercer 5 years ago, and Auburn only won that game by 14 points. And the difference was Auburn had 5 turnovers in that game, and I believe 3 or 4 were in the red zone. On paper, they dominated the game, over 500 yards, and Mercer only had like a little over 200 yards. Auburn dominated the game, but those 5 turnovers killed them on the scoreboard. So you just never know what's going to happen in terms of that. I think LSU is going to win. I was actually surprised. I picked Florida to beat Utah, and a couple people were actually, well, Utah's ranked number 12 in the country. I'm like, don't read into those polls. Polls are meaningless this early in the season. That's just people basing things on primarily what took place last year.
Yeah. I got Florida on the money line. I know Buddy's probably tired of me, jinxing them, but I think Florida, LSU, and Auburn are going to be the 3 surprise teams in the SEC this year. I really do. I think all of their over and under regular season win numbers are low. Florida and LSU is 6.5, and I think Auburn's was 6. I mean, I think that's just ridiculously low for those 3 programs.
Yeah.
Well, I think Florida and LSU are definitely going to be significantly better than what you're going to see this weekend. But in that opening weekend, I'm just not so sure with new coaching staff, players just trying to implement those new schemes in a real game situation. Utah with those 14 returning starters and a really solid quarterback in Cam Rising. I think that's going to be tough to overcome unless Utah comes to the swamp and they're a little fidgety and they turn the ball over early. Then, it could be a totally different ball game. But here's one that you guys may consider weird. But, a lot of people jump on these type of games. I wouldn't touch it. But I think Alabama 41 over Utah State. I tell you what, I've been thinking
high.
This game has 49-10 written all over.
Yeah, I agree. Saban always has that early out of conference game where he's got the cover, and then normally he does take care of Alabama people. I mean, I think he's good about watching the spread. But those early games, there's always a backdoor cover that comes to the underdog with a late touchdown. It's happened like the last 3 or 4 years with Alabama when they played that out-of-conference, quote-unquote, cupcake. And Utah State's really, I wouldn't call them a cupcake. I think they're not your typical directional team. So I think you're right, Jimmy. I think the 41's maybe a touchdown too rich.
Well, Stuart, regarding what Jimmy said about the Florida-Utah game, got a text from one of our listeners down in Immokalee, Florida. That's the muck down at Lake Okeechobee. Carl Childers said, in reference to what Carl Childers said to that young boy taking the wash back home, he goes, "How far you got to tote it?" He goes, "Well, it's about a mile down there to my mama's house." He goes, "I'd help you out if I don't give out first." Well, I think that's the case of Florida tonight. I'm with Jimmy. I think Utah, we take a lot of jabs. People do, not really us, but at the Pac-12, Pac-10, whatever it is now with UCLA and Southern Cal leaving. I just don't think that Florida can stay with Utah 4 quarters with the depth that Utah has. I think they're really good, but I want Florida to win. But again, there's a lot of tall buildings in Las Vegas, Stuart, for a lot of reasons. And here's one I'm curious about. Our good friend Jim Cherry, Michael Sag, Robert Hill, lots of Razorbacks over here at Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas, going up there to the Cincinnati game. What do you like about that game? I know Cincinnati had 9 players drafted. Desmond Ritter's fighting for that starting quarterback job with the Atlanta Falcons. It's like being the first guy in the barber chair at boot camp. You know what's going to happen.
Did you all not see how many the number of support staff members that Florida roster had? No, I'm joking.
173 or something.
Yeah, it was like, hey, each player on the roster has 2 guys.
Crazy,
staff to help. It's just wild.
That team picture is insane.
The Bull Gators don't have enough to spend their money on. That's all I'm telling you.
Yes.
Yeah, I do have a little different aspect to add on this Utah-Florida game. The Pac-10 has been widely maligned over the last several years. They haven't had a team in the playoff since 2016. And I think Utah's going to come in with a lot of motivation to try to represent the Pac-10 because, again, they've been taking a pretty heavy dose of criticism over the years. And I think they'd really like to change that perception if they could today.
Stuart,
that's a good point.
Yeah. So Stuart.
Well, I'm trying to pull it up now. My feature, I did my write-up this week for the Mercer game. I always do my SEC picks, and Mark Murphy asked me, but he thought my pick with Florida winning over Utah was surprising. And so I'm trying to pull it up now because I want to make sure I got the numbers right.
I've known Mark over 40 years. He's one of my favorite people in the world, one of my mentors in journalism and what we do. And he knows it, but I think I don't like Utah, nothing against them. I know Jim Swarthout lives out there, but I still think it's just Utah is a. I'm a Jimmy. I mean, it's hard to argue on that one.
Stuart, if Florida doesn't win, you and I both have got some splaining to do, Lucy, next week. That's all I know, because we're both on them. I'm on them too.
Yeah.
Well, here was the stat that I pulled out when Mark asked me about why pick Florida over Utah. I love their head coach. Reminds me of Tommy Tuberville. They're usually very sound defensively, special teams. Offense is not maybe as explosive as you would like it to be, but they're fundamentally sound. And he's built that program very strong in the Pac-12, completely different from the success of the other teams within that conference normally have doing it on the offensive side. He's done it mainly on the defensive side. So what I looked at, though, since he's been at Utah, if you look at Utah's first Power 5 opponent to start the season, not necessarily the first, but their very first Power 5 opponent of the season, out of 17 seasons, they're 9-8, 9 wins, 8 losses. And out of the 9 wins, I believe 6 were by 6 points or less. So my point being is, I think Utah comes out of the gate kind of slow, playing on the road in an environment like that. I just, that's why I'm giving the edge to Florida. I think Florida has the more talented roster, but we talked about that again. That doesn't always translate to winning. And this is a whole new Florida staff. Are they going to take advantage of that talent they have on the sideline, or are they going to lose games on the sideline that we spoke about?
If Ben Hill Griffith shows up and brings that 4-point advantage about playing home, if the swamp is rocking, I think that might be the difference if they both stay close toward the fourth quarter. If they don't, then, again, Utah, I do think before Billy Napier gets things going, I think Utah is a more talented team, but I do think when you think about that Mystique coming in to play a Southeastern Conference team under the lights in a hostile place, that intangible in the fourth quarter, I'd rather have that on my side in the fourth quarter in a tight game than not.
All right, capacity there is almost 90,000 at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium in the Swamp. All right, Stuart, here's another question. Get fun. The over and under in that game, and the over and under I'm talking about is what percentage of the women at the game are going to be wearing tube tops or tank tops and jorts? It's going to be awesome down there. Listen, I love the Swamp. They took it down when you come into the stadium, and Jimmy and Frank and Stuart, this, you go down. It traps the humidity. It's like being in a steam room in a herringbone blazer, man. There's no wind.
Oh, yeah.
Remember Jackson, Mississippi Memorial Stadium there? That is the hottest stadium I've ever been to in my life. There's no wind, and it was built back in the early Neolithic, maybe the Bronze Age. It's an old stadium.
Rob, I remember. And the stands are right up on the field.
Yeah.
It's just a nightmare. For me as an Auburn fan, I always found Florida and LSU to be probably the most intimidating environments to play in for Auburn on the road.
Next to
Vanderbilt. And the record shows it.
Next to Vanderbilt.
I can remember, Rob, a road trip going there, LSU. In fact, I was in the bar business. Of course, I'd be in the bar business. I was in the bar business back in the 80s on campus. We loaded up like 4 or 5 bartenders. We had this VW bus. I don't even know how it made it past Pascagoula, Mississippi. We went down to Gainesville, and it was a morning kick, and it was friggin' I'll never forget this. Michael Brooks actually intercepted 2 passes in that game, returned them both for touchdowns. But it was back when they had that nasty AstroTurf in Florida. And when I tell you, there were people passing out left and right in the stands. The line to the frozen orange juice cups wrapped around the freaking stadium. And when I tell you, I saw the heat radiating off that old nasty ass carpet. It had to be 130 degrees on the floor of that stadium that those guys were playing in. It had to be.
Yeah. Stuart, we got a couple more minutes. Yeah, keep going. I'm sorry.
Now, I will say that around game time, the temperatures, so I guess 6:30. No, they're in Eastern time, so it's 7:30. So we're talking a reasonable. The real feel's going to be around 80 degrees, and so I don't think
no heat issues today.
Yeah, Utah's going to be gasping for air or anything like that. And another factor a lot of people don't realize is that, like BYU, Utah has a lot of Mormons on that roster. So you've got some older players who've been on those 2-year missions and, are in their early 20s and they're a bit more mature. So they're likely to be able to kind of handle that early electricity in the stadium and be able to handle maybe a negative play or two if it happens to turn out that way early in the game. So it's just a really interesting matchup, and I agree that this could be one of the more, I think, just intriguing games because we can talk about it, but I don't really think anybody actually knows what's going to happen until you just line up and start playing.
Well, those guys have at least those Mormons on the Utah team have got 2 years of mountain biking on those legs. They're going to be tough. And
and look, I got a lot of refreshing lime green Jello over on the sideline in case they need it. So they'll be good.
Stuart,
and ice cold Sprite.
Yeah. Stuart, tell us, and again, I mean, thank you for staying on. This is a lot of fun. It is opening day. Stuart, man, tell people how they can follow you because you put out great work. And do us a favor, give us a retweet on Twitter. We really would appreciate that. And folks, you need to know how to follow.
Need that parlay.
Yeah.
I still need that parlay. You ain't going without that parlay.
Yeah. Tell people.
I got to do it in some type of code because I don't want to affect my employment elsewhere.
Yeah, you got it. Hey, so put it on Twitter. I'll follow you on Twitter. I'll be able to decipher it.
Yeah.
So, hey, real quick, I want to make this mention, and I think, Frank brought this up in terms of it's when you, for instance, LSU and Florida State playing one another, as a fan, you're going to find out real quick how good your team is a lot faster when you play games like that. Arkansas opening up with Cincinnati, and, of course, Utah and Florida playing one another. Obviously, the Georgia-Oregon game. Auburn opening up with Mercer. How much are you going to find out about your team? Auburn opened up with 2 cupcakes last year, looked very dominant, and then we saw how it started going off the rails, and it looked like they had gathered it back together. We're at 6-2, and I don't want to go too deep in that, but my point being is that's what makes this game so interesting. Auburn could win by 70 points tonight. What does that really mean about this Auburn football team? Or they could struggle and only win by 14 like they did 5 years ago, and people are going to be panicking, oh, my God, this is a horrible Auburn team. Well, that team ended up beating Georgia and Alabama in back-to-back weeks at the end of the year and made it to the SEC championship. So as a fan, I've always preferred opening up, especially if we had a veteran roster. I always preferred Auburn opening up with a legitimate opponent because I wanted to know right away where this team stood and which direction they needed to go in instead of guessing, the first couple of weeks.
Stuart, hold those thoughts because this is awesome. We're going to take a quick break. I want you to close with that when you come back. We'll be back with more. It is Sidelines. It is Saturday. It is opening day of dove season. It is a great day. God bless America. Back in a minute.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Brown, Jimmy Hodge, Frank Duffy, Stewart, Stat Tiger Carter on a rapid fire round table college football Saturday. Hello, everybody out there on Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Lake Martin area, Central Alabama, over in Atlanta, all over listening, www.sidelines.live. Thank you, everybody. Goober says, hey to Goober. But Stewart, you were closing out with some great stuff. And speaking of Gomer Pyle is from Sylacauga, Alabama. The only two people that made any real money, I've been told, on the Andy Griffith Show were the ones that bought the production company rights and everything. And that was Andy Griffith and Jim Neighbors from Sylacauga. Andy from not Mount Pilot, Mount Airy, North Carolina. But Stewart, you were making a great point there about this Auburn. And I remember when Auburn played Georgia in the rematch, December 3rd of 2017, they were number 2 in the college football playoff rankings. And that other ranking, They were like 3rd or 4th. Who cares? The only one that matters at that point is the CFP ranking. So, yeah, you struggled against Mercer. Big deal. It's what you look like in the second game and after that. So keep going.
Oh, yeah. You go back to 2004. Auburn played Citadel early on in the year, and I think they only scored 3 offensive touchdowns, and everyone was in a panic mode.
Yeah.
Al Borges was a horrible hire. And then as you watch that season progress, once when they got over that LSU hump, it was like, okay, this team could be special. So it's, now this year I do prefer Auburn to open up the season with the way they are, 5 home games, Mercer, San Jose State, primarily because I really don't think the quarterback position is completely locked down. And I think the coaching staff is still kind of tweaking their depth chart. And these 2 games are almost like a live scrimmage. No offense to the opposition, but it is like that. And now we'll be able to see when the lights come on and when these opposing defenses are trying to kill Finley or Ashford or Calzado, no matter who the starter is, we will probably see some more separation at the quarterback position at Auburn.
I've always been kind of skeptical about the myth of the biggest improvement a team has is from week 1 to week 2, because first of all, if you play a decent team in team 1 and you don't look very good, you can't help but have significant improvement in game 2 if you're playing a team you're supposed to murder, and then but what you're talking about, I think Tennessee Ball State fits the description perfectly. It was impossible to tell just how good Tennessee was because they just steamrolled literally from the first play from scrimmage, and yet they go to Pittsburgh, who came off just a coin flip game last week or Thursday night against West Virginia. And
great game, by the way.
That was a great game. Really was, and I got to tell you, I was really impressed with JT Daniels, man. The way he played, and it just tells you how good a player is when he's 100% healthy. And when you have a torn labrum, I can understand why he was concerned about his future if you go out there too early, against the SEC competition, and you don't have that labrum healed. I mean, you're not going to take chances, and Stedman came in and took total advantage of it. But the first 2 nights that we've had of college football have just, I think, increased everybody's anticipation of the type of games we're going to have all year, because we've had some really good games these first 2 nights.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jimmy. I was watching color TV. The neighbors had the blinds pulled up, and I was watching it, and then they put them down in the fourth quarter of that West Virginia game. Cable's pretty expensive. But Stewart, I want to say this too. You got a list though of your picks in the SEC. I know you put that out in the Inside the Auburn Tigers in your weekly newsletter, and people, you really need to subscribe to Stewart and what he does, because he knows his football inside the Auburn Tigers, but he knows it for all these schools. He covers it. He does the research.
Yeah, I don't do point spreads.
Yeah.
I just pick the game.
Yeah.
Obviously this week the pretty much is pretty obvious. Texas A&M is playing Sam Houston. I mean, that's going to be similar to like Tennessee playing Ball State. Obviously Tennessee destroyed Ball State. Vanderbilt looked impressive playing a very depleted Hawaii roster. then we get into the biggest game of the week in the SEC, Georgia and Oregon. If Oregon was to pull off the upset, if you're a Georgia fan, it's an out-of-conference game. You're still win everything else out. You're still back in the national title hunt. So, but I do believe Georgia's going to win that game. And when it comes down to games like that, I just look at who the better team is up front on the offensive line, defensive line, and so that edge would go to Georgia. That Arkansas-Cincinnati game could be very, very. That'll be another exciting game to watch. I am picking Arkansas to win that. Ole Miss and Troy, that could be a little dicey game early on. I think Troy's going to play with a chip on their shoulder, but I think Ole Miss is going to win that. Again, we already talked about, I got Florida over Utah in a very close game, Kentucky over Miami, Ohio, Auburn over Mercer. Vanderbilt plays Elon, and I think they're going to win that game, obviously.
Yeah.
Alabama will roll against Utah State. That Mississippi State-Memphis game could get very interesting. Memphis won that game last year.
Yeah.
And then South Carolina over Georgia State. Auburn had their hands full with Georgia State last year. Yeah. And then, of course, that LSU-Florida State game on the 4th. That's a big game, but I'm picking LSU. I'm going with all the SEC teams this week, but that's no shocker because there's not a whole lot of big games except for the Georgia, Oregon, LSU, Florida State, and then the Utah matchup with Florida.
All right, here's another.
Hey, don't worry about producing point spreads, though, because we have Shoney and Valdosta in consultation with his buddy Marco Luciano.
Yeah. And Joey
those point spreads to discuss and mull over.
And don't forget the great soothsayer and odds maker Joey Bag of Donuts. Okay. Forget about it. But let me say
well, this. Earlier when we were talking about the Alabama-Utah State game, people got to remember, Saban is wanting to establish depth early in the year too. So obviously once his starters take care of business and they build a big lead, you start playing your backup players. If your opposition still has their starters out and they're putting up some late scores, that's really not a reflection on how bad or how good Alabama is. It all just depends on who you're playing. I remember during the 2010 season, Auburn was trying to establish depth, and they were giving up a lot of points late in the game, and a lot of people were burning down the bridges going, oh, my God, the defense is just absolutely horrible. And I'm like, when are these points being scored? Is our starting defense out on the field when these points are being given up? And if they're not, it's not that big of a concern.
Yeah.
I agree. Just a litmus test late in games.
It's when the game
that's how most backdoor covers happen.
Yeah, it's when the game is in play is what you look at, like for the real stats. If you want to really break it down, I got a good quote message here from one of our listeners, Mike Matheny Beef. He and the crew heading down. I'm sure they'll stop at the Betty Davis Grocery on Highway 7. They got great ribs, barbecue, and ice cold beer. He says Utah is a lock of the week to beat Florida because they got 5 Samoans starting on the line of scrimmage.
Well,
I mean, that right there. I mean, how can you argue with that, guys?
They do have a pipeline. Those Utah schools really do have a lot of this. Remember, we had a Samoan on our defensive on our defensive line on our national championship team. He used to do the haka before every LSU game right outside the locker room. Man, I'm telling you what, I don't mess with those boys, man. Yeah. They look like they can scare the spirit right out of you.
Well,
hey, those are big boys. And one fact that a lot of people don't realize, Tua is 100% Samoan, and his grandfather founded the Hawaii Youth Football League in the Honolulu area because you had so many Samoan kids in that age group, 6th to 8th grade. They had kids that were as big as 250, 300 pounds, and they couldn't play under normal weight limits. So he established that league, and it just gives you an idea, of the different areas and the different circumstances that people have to go through to allow kids to play football at a young age. And it was a really cool story when I found out about it.
I don't want to go near that dangerous Al Campanis third rail, before that Al Campanis went down. But I will tell you, a lot of the Samoans their build is really made for offensive and defensive line play. I mean, so it does not surprise me that them two Utes, that they have that type of, beef on their offensive line, and they're very quick.
Well, I'll say this.
And it's similar kind of to the Japanese culture. Most people think about the majority of their citizenry as being small, but I mean, Japan's where you get those sumo wrestlers too.
Yeah.
So I mean, every culture has all kinds of different variants.
Yeah.
And again, you just those are big boys, and there were a couple of high schools in the Dallas area. I know when I lived there that had big Samoan populations, and man, they had some really stout lines up front on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun. I mean, look, Utah, they've got players, but I mean, Stewart makes a great argument. Matheny makes a great argument. But I'll say this: that's why they play the game. But there's a lot of good football to watch. Got Stewart again. Arkansas, Cincinnati. Who's your pick again? Arkansas?
Yeah, I'm picking Arkansas, primarily because I thought Jefferson's a great quarterback, and that's primarily the reason why I'm going with that. Pittman has just done a great job with Arkansas. I will say this: I don't know if they'll match their win total from last year. I really felt by the end of the year that Arkansas was one of the better coached teams in the Southeastern Conference.
Correct.
He just did an incredible job. Yeah. But they've lost some key players off that team. And as Frank brought up, especially in the SEC West, you could make a good argument for Mississippi State continuing to play better. Ole Miss could make that jump again, to more of an elite status. I think LSU is going to be better than they were last year. I think Auburn is too. I want to mention this, and I think this is really interesting, and it goes back to Nick Saban's rat poison, when he talks about that in the media. I don't know if y'all picked up on it, but I think Harson's a little bit leery of his team, not so much looking past Mercer. This is the opening game. It's a night game. It's going to be a great environment. They can't wait to hit someone else other than themselves. So yeah. I don't think they're going to overlook Mercer. But what I think Harsin is worried about, if they get out to a big lead, will they lose their focus? And to the point where he said, look, when you're on the field, you will give 100%. The coaching staff will decide when it's time to pull you off the field. You don't decide, you jump out 28-0, you're still got some starters out there, and they decide, we can cut back now, we can give it a break, we got a big lead. No. He wants those players to play hard, to the point when he put out his 2-deep depth chart, a lot of people were scratching their heads, and I think he was sending a message to some players on his roster that, hey, we haven't even played a game yet. Nothing has been accomplished yet.
Yeah.
And I think he's trying to keep that team focused, which I think is a great idea.
Well, and the most important thing, what matters the most is, do those players, have they bought all in? Do they believe in each other, in their coaching staff, and do they believe in Auburn and love it? And that you apply that to Alabama, to LSU, to Memphis, to Arkansas, to Georgia, Ole Miss. It doesn't matter. If the guys on the team aren't all on the same page, you're just a disaster looking for something to run into. And that's what
people forget a lot. These are 18-year-old kids in a blowout game. These kids aren't talking about football on the sideline. Once the game's been locked up, they're talking about, hey, what parties are we going to go to this weekend? They're college kids.
Exactly.
And they could lose their focus so quick. We don't see those things. You could have a starting quarterback whose girlfriend, breaks up with him in the middle of the week.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's got that in his head and he plays poorly on Saturday, and you're going, what the heck is going on with him? Again, these are young teenage kids. And life events are magnified at that age. So there's so much going on. And I think, again, Harson's just trying to keep this team focused on the task at hand.
Yeah. And that's,
I think if you've been or you've gone through what Harsin has, and you're presiding over a program that's on a 5-game losing streak, you're not overlooking anybody.
No.
I mean, he's going to be, noticing the performance as much as possible of every player on the field as he can tell from the sideline. And if there's anybody he sees slacking off, there's a lack of effort. He's going to be putting somebody in that he knows is going to be giving 100% on every play. And I think the opponent for them is irrelevant. It's up to them to give everything they have on every play and go from there.
Yeah,
you're right, Jimmy. You're right, Jimmy. Since that season ended last year, I look for Auburn to come out crisp and focused. I really do.
Well, as they say in the country, them boys better come out there with the hair on fire. And as Ray Mooring would always say in softball, when Pat Cornelius or Shoney would go yard, that's a home run. That's what I'm screaming. I'm going to tell you something.
And from what I'm hearing from my Auburn buddies, the players were really behind Harsin.
Oh, they love
it. They bought in.
Yeah, listen, guys, Stewart, man, this has been fun. It's been more than fun. I mean, I feel like a barrel of drunk monkeys rolling down Mount Everest, man. We got some momentum going. It's a great day. Jimmy Hides, Frank Duffy, Rodney Orr in that first segment, Stewart, Stat Tiger, Carter. We got about a minute and a half left. Tell people how they can follow you. And let me say this too. Go out and help somebody, folks, with the expectation to get nothing in return. Don't give to get, give to give. And we most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. Don't just talk and tell people what a good person you are. Prove it. You got chances to do that every single day. And if you ever have any doubt about where you live, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. America is the people. It's nothing else but the people. Stewart, tell them how they can follow you, because you are one of the great ones we're talking about.
I appreciate it. 24/7 sports, obviously, inside the Auburn Tiger magazine or inside the Auburn Tigers. Now that football season's cranked up, I do a pregame feature earlier in the week, post-game Saturday night. It's a night game tonight. So after I get back from Jordan-Hare, I'll be working on I do a statistical report card. You can catch me on Twitter, and then I have a YouTube account where I will do highlight videos and do breakdowns of some of the key plays of the game.
Well, look, man, do us a favor. Give us a retweet. We appreciate it so much. You got thousands of followers because you are fantastic at what you do. Again, everybody be careful driving to the games, man. As things go along in the season, if your team is struggling, some fan bases will drive to the games with their lights on. You know what I'm talking about? So let's make it a safe weekend. Everybody out there driving to the games, God love you. And 715 West Magnolia, y'all be good and behave. Have a great one, everybody. See ya Tuesday morning. We're taking off Monday for Labor Day.